Hello. Today is Friday, January 2nd, 2026. Welcome to Simply Trade, Cindy's version. I'm Cindy Allen, CEO of Trade Force Multiplier, which is a global trade consultancy firm. Welcome to Simply Trade, Cindy's version, where I base an international trade update on a Taylor Swift song, thus Cindy's version. This podcast is brought to you in association with the Global Training Center. Today's song that I've chosen for the first podcast of the year is Right Where You Left Me, which is a song off of Taylor Swift's Evermore album recorded in 2020. And I'll get into why in a few moments. But first, what happened in international trade in the last 2 weeks? Luckily, not much over the holidays, which I think is good. It gave us all a break and let us breathe and enjoy the holidays with our friends and family and our fellow trade consultants and trade professionals. What we've seen, however, is Italian pasta. Italian pasta almost became too expensive to buy. It almost became like filet mignon for a lot of people. There was a proposal to take the anti-dumping duty to 92%, which added to the IEEPA reciprocal of 15% for the EU, would have been over 100%. But it was announced in the last few days that that is not going to happen, that those anti-dumping duty rates were set much lower than 92%. Some specific companies had specific rates as they did before in the anti-dumping duty case. So we're happy that we can enjoy our pasta in the new year without being too expensive. Also announced in the last few days, upholstered furniture and kitchen cabinets. The 232 case on those were delayed for 1 year. So good news. If you are remodeling your kitchen, might want to order those kitchen cabinets in the next year and get those in, or also refit your living room with your upholstered furniture sooner rather than later. We are still waiting for the Supreme Court decision on the IEEPA reciprocal and IEEPA fentanyl cases. Those who were predicting that a decision would be by the end of the year, unfortunately, that didn't happen. Now everyone is looking to next week when the Supreme Court comes back in session, if those decisions will be released then. So we're in a wait and see mode. CBP also announced this week that duty refunds will be completely electronic beginning in February. It's going to be mandatory in March, but beginning in February, CBP is going to issue all refunds electronically. They've worked through a few issues such as a payment to your broker or to another third party if they're the ones who should be getting those refunds. Let's say, the broker made a mistake, misclassified something, clerical error, they filed a claim, you didn't pay that additional duty to them, so they are still owed that additional duty. That refund will go to the broker if they filed the proper form, which is a 4811 form. So I'm glad to see that they've worked out those issues and those refunds will be issued electronically. We're hoping that all payments can be made electronically, including for protest claims that post-summary corrections, things of that nature, where the trade can pay CBP in an electronic format as well. So we're hoping to have a completely electronic payment process for everything, which I'm still hoping. We did see that COAC is to meet on January 14th. This is virtual for all attendees. This is a meeting that was scheduled due to the delay of the December meeting that was scheduled for COAC. All previous subcommittees and work groups were actually dissolved over the last year. So I'm interested to see if during this meeting that a new format will be announced or discussed in new work groups or new subcommittees will be formed and announced. So I think a lot of us in the trade are really looking forward to hearing what that really looks like moving forward for a new COAC. Also, in December, the COAC had an application process for new members. As you know, every 2 years, members roll off, and there are quite a number of individuals who are rolling off of COAC this year because they've reached their 2-term limit. So it's going to be exciting to see who gets appointed, who applies, which we never know, but we do know who gets appointed, and it's never a quick or early process. So I don't expect that to happen by the January meeting, but it will be interesting to see how they move forward with that. So right where you left me, off of the bonus track off of the Evermore album for Taylor Swift. This song really talks about how Taylor Swift got stuck, how she couldn't move on, couldn't move forward, especially her lyrics. Trends change, rumors fly through new skies. I'm right where you left me. Matches burn after the other, wages earned and lessons learned, but I'm right here where you left me. And I think really, one thing, trade professionals really did earn our wages in 2025 with all of the changes. What lessons have we learned? I think really that the big lesson is that the approach to trade has completely changed. We see heavy enforcement. We see industry-specific actions. We see using all of the tools in the toolbox, both from a CBP and government perspective. They have looked at all of the tools they have had, much like the administration, and said, what's out there that we aren't using? Let's use that. Let's use it in new ways. Can we apply a certain piece of technology in a new and different way? And not only is the government doing that, they're expecting you, those of us in the trade, to do that same thing, looking at what you have at your disposal, what automation, what industry officials have, what is out there, what's possible, and how can you use that to ensure that you have compliance. So that's a little bit of a mind shift from the government perspective, which was previously very regimented. This is for this, that is for that. We don't mingle the two. And now they have a much more aggressive and open approach to using what is out there. We also see, a lack of the formal announcements, rumors, as in the song, tend to be true. We're seeing lots of rumors. Then we see a tweet. Then we see something on Truth Social. We, are waiting. We're getting the phone calls from the clients. We're getting phone calls from our CEOs. What does this mean? And we're saying, yes, it's probably something is coming, but we have to wait till we get that official announcement, which has been a problem in the past where we get that, in a few hours. So I've been pleased to see that at least those actions have a week to 2 week ramp up period, which helps all of us in the trade. We're trying to apply existing rules and regulations to newer actions. We are a very regimented type of industry. There's rules, there's regulations, there's statutes. We look at all of them. We tend to be very methodical in our approach. And in this administration and this approach, it's really understanding how we can filter those regulations, rules, and statutes and apply them to the new type of approach, new types of actions. 2025 was a pivotal year. I think we're going to look back on this in the decades to come and say this was a major change, much like some other events in the major change. I've seen a lot of discussion about this is comparing the approach to tariffs to the 1920s or the 1930s, which resulted in the Tariff Act of 1930, which was a major change. All of the high tariffs, the effect it had on the economy, the effect it had on different industries, what the downstream effects were. And I think we're going to look back on this and say 2025 was as a pivotal year, as pivotal as the 1930s. I like to look back and think, 100 years ago after the 1930s, we saw many different changes to our environment. Cargo vessels were not a thing until later in the 1930s, 1940s, when steamship lines discovered that they could make money on cargo instead of including passenger and cargo. Cargo used to be a thing that happened with the passenger vessels, but cargo became a cargo-only steamship lines became popular in the 1930s, especially as the World War II guys came back and said, there's a whole other world out there. We have an opportunity to trade. Let's develop these ocean-going vessels so that we can trade more effectively. Then we saw air cargo come into play as air travel got more and more economical and available to the general public. We saw more, freight in the bellies of those aircrafts, and also the eventual development of cargo-only aircraft. We saw containerization of the vessel market. containers going into airlines, which led to the development of the express industry, doing express only, which started only in documents and then quickly expanded to packages. The automation of the clearance process, where before it was very manual, then you typed up those forms, but they was still a manual process. And with early ABI and early ACS and the automation of clearance, the automation of manifests. Manifests used to not be electronic. So the only time that the customs officials knew what was coming in on those boats, knew what was coming in on those airlines, was when those manifests were manually presented to the government. And we've seen that morph into advanced data requirements for security issues after 9/11, after some of the other plots that we saw. There were restrictions put on, and the data became much more important for the government to understand. And now I think we'll see the 2025 tariff actions as being as monumental as some of those major occurrences that have happened over the last, century. Throughout all of these changes, all of the industries and trade were treated the same. You had free trade agreements that came into effect. However, those free trade agreements weren't necessarily industry specific. You might have had different tariff numbers, different duty rates for those tariff numbers, but the way you treated pharmaceuticals was the same way you treated wood products, was the same way you treated manufactured products. So the approach was the same. And now we're seeing some movement to industry-specific types of actions. This one has this action, that one has that action. This one has different country of origin determinations, and that one as applied to the different tariff treatments, to the different tariff remedies. So this is a major change for all of us in the trade industry to go from that sort of country level approach to a country level and an industry level and sometimes a company level approach. When you look at some of the pharmaceutical agreements that have been made to avoid Section 232 duties on pharmaceuticals, you're seeing that on a company by company basis and sometimes on a specific medicine basis as well. So specific products. Is that the way of the future? Are we going to have to understand every specific product and how that is treated differently? I think with the different automation tools, CBP is interested in looking at that. The administration is interested in looking at that. And that's going to require so much more data from trade professionals. Customs brokers are going to have to look at how they're gathering data, at what point in the process, the depth of the information they need, and then what automation can really be built around that need and providing that. There are so many more templates to maintain. Before we had a free trade agreement template, and that may have differed from trade agreement to trade agreement, but they were basically the same. And now you have that multi-layered approach. You have a country level, an industry level, a company specific level that you're going to have to develop each individual template for that on top of all the different tariff numbers, on top of all the trade remedy approaches that are happening. So it's going to be a very fractured approach. And it's not just the velocity of change that we're going to have to deal with, but how the actions were implemented and how they were rolled out and at what level. Is it a tariff level? Is it a company level? Is it a country level? Is it a product level? Those are how we have to really understand moving forward. And I hope that when we look at this, you're not going to be right where we left you at the beginning of 2025. We really need to understand how we're going to change and not let ourselves get stuck in that old mindset of, well, this is how it should be because this is how the statute was written. This is how the regulations were written. This is how the policy is. Opening your eyes to understanding those different levels of process and the different levels of application for these trade actions, I think is really going to free us up to move forward in the new year. So happy 2026. Happy New Year to everyone. I wish you a very prosperous and hopefully a little less busy 2026 than we had in the last year. We'll see you next week.